Welcome to Behavioral Health Today, a podcast brought to you by the Triad Network. This podcast is designed to share trending topics occurring within the world and our communities and bring them a behavioral and mental health perspective.
Welcome to Behavioral Health Today. I'm your host, Sharlee Dixon. My guest today is Dr. James Thompson. Dr. Thompson is a physician, author, and passionate advocate for transformational wellness. With over 35 years of medical experience, he discovered the profound benefits of a whole food, plant-based lifestyle after a life-changing 21-day Daniel's fast in 2012. This inspired him to earn a certification in integrative holistic nutrition and develop his Fearless framework, which is the foundation of his book, Fearless Wellness. In Fearless Wellness, Dr. Thompson guides readers to improve their health through plant-based nutrition, movement, stress management, and purposeful living. He is dedicated to empowering people to live healthier, more vibrant lives. We're thrilled to welcome Dr. James Thompson today to dive into his Fearless framework for holistic wellness, share practical tips for improving diet, exercise, sleep, stress, social connections, and spiritual purpose, and explore how his book, Fearless Wellness, and programs can empower listeners to transform their health and well-being. Thank you so much, Dr. James Thompson, for being here with us today. Welcome to the show.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Absolutely. So right before we got on today, we were discussing a Daniel's fast. And so some of our listeners may not know what the Daniel's fast is or the significance of it. Can you start out today telling us a bit about what that fast is and kind of share how it changed your journey from practicing medicine to, discovering these life-changing benefits of a plant-based diet?
Sure. The Daniel fast may mean different things to people, but it's drawn from the Old Testament in the Bible. And in our church, took on the Daniel fast for the first time about 15 years ago. And there was a design to it that involved fasting for initially 10 days until 5 p.m. From time you awaken until 5 p.m. in the evening, you would not have anything but water to drink, water or tea. Now, when you broke the fast at 5 p.m., you would break it with only natural foods, which was essentially a whole food plant-based diet for those days. That's how ours was designed. Daniel fast can be designed differently by different churches, but it's based on the book of Daniel in the Bible, where Daniel fasted and was jailed at some point and he challenged the people that were supervising him in jail, the guards, that he could fast on water and be more clear and stronger than them days or weeks later. And so he proved that point in terms of being able to show that his mental clarity, his intelligence was sharp, even though he wasn't eating the king's meal, which was a lot of meat and things like that. So anyway, we did the fast, and about a week into the 10-day fast, I noticed I was resting a lot better. I just fell asleep and felt more refreshed when I got up, and I felt my mood had picked up. And then the following year, we did a 21-day Daniel fast. Mm-hmm. And that was just eye-opening, because by the second week, my joints weren't hurting anymore. I was running every day, 3 miles most days of the week, to get off blood pressure medicines, which I was never able to get off during that time period. I'd been on them for 25 years, and I had some side effects from them, and in practice, I thought they kind of slowed my thinking a little bit. It was 3 medicines, or what we call a water pill, plus a couple of other medicines, and a cholesterol-lowering agent. Well, they became too strong when I was on that 3-week fast. I started getting up, I was dizzy, and it occurred to me it may be because my medications are too strong.
Right.
So then that drew my curiosity even further, and make a longer story short, it basically rejuvenated me. It let me know that I did not require these medicines if I kept on this journey of fasting and prayer and eating healthy food. And I was thinking at that time, the food must have a lot to do with it. I couldn't think that just praying did that. But anyway, I didn't tell my pastor that. That made me do a deep dive into nutrition. And I ended up taking a year-long certification course in integrative nutrition. And that's when I really realized the gap in knowledge my personal knowledge of nutrition and the gap in the medical curriculum. I went to a competitive medical school, but I think we had maybe 3 hours of nutrition, and that was basically
Wow.
in the intensive care unit for people that were on IVs that needed certain nutrients because they were deficient. I really
Hmm.
didn't learn what I learned in just that year about food. And when I did adopt it myself, instead of just going through life eating lean meats, like chicken without the skin, avoiding fried foods and excessive alcohol and all that, and still not able to get off three of the blood pressure medicines. Once I did adopt the whole food plant-based lifestyle, within 3 months, I was off the medications. I didn't need them any
Wow.
longer. I worked with my doctor. Might have been, it was for two of them or three, for the total four, including cholesterol, by 6 months, I was off all of them. And my numbers were great. My blood pressure was fine. My cholesterol was even lower on a plant-based diet than it was on atorvastatin, a very common cholesterol lowering agent.
Hmm.
And I haven't looked back since. I integrated this concept into my allergy practice. I saw mostly people with asthma, a lot of people with food allergies, eczema,
Hmm.
various skin allergic diseases. And I incorporated into that practice, and it was so rewarding because people would reveal to me that their primary doctors don't even ask them about what they eat, give them ideas and resources.
Hmm.
And so that was rewarding because a lot of people found their asthma was much more easy to control. Their facial acne cleared up, their eczema got better, they had fewer hives. They just responded very well to this change in diet. But I also included lifestyle. So the Daniel fast was really what sparked my interest. I'd already been 25 years in practice before I realized this gap in knowledge.
Wow. Wow. It is so interesting to me. For one, I commend you and your church family. Like I was mentioning, my sister regularly does Daniel's fast, but I tried it for a few days and I could not make it past that hump. So maybe again in the future, I have to reach out for those tips on how to make it through. So just that mental fortitude that it takes to do this type of fast for 21 days, and eventually potentially change your entire eating lifestyle is incredible. But it's also interesting to me that, many doctors don't necessarily connect the food that we eat to the ailments or the injuries or just like you mentioned, the things that the allergies that we experience. It's quite interesting that that link is not there in primary medicine for the most part.
Really shameful. I mean, we should be taught in medical school about root causes, not just sick care. And that's
Right.
what most of this healthcare environment is now, dealing with sick care instead of well care and getting to the root cause. So we spend so much time in training on learning about medications, learning
Yeah.
about procedures. If you're a surgeon, you're learning mostly about procedures. And what do you do when patients come in? You assess them for procedures. And,
Right.
for doctors that deal with just medications and not surgeons, they deal mostly, if there's an ill, let's find the pill. And
Mm.
that's just not the right way. And
Yeah.
even after training, there's something called CME courses, continuing medical
Hmm.
education. Well, who do you think sponsors 99% of that
Drug
50
and
hours a week?
pharmaceutical
No,
companies.
pharmaceuticals. So you're going to hear drug sponsored
Hmm.
lectures. So it's really shameful, but it is changing slowly but surely. Doctors are becoming much more aware, many of them from their patients because of social media. They're learning about these things. And it's nothing wrong with doctors learning from patients. It should prompt us to open our eyes. It certainly helped me and enhanced my practice. And that's what sparked my after practice career now in promoting nutrition.
Very nice, very nice. And since we're going there towards nutrition, what inspired you to develop the actual fearless framework? Can you just kind of give us a little look into that really quickly before we dig deeper into what each letter stands for? And why did you choose those 8 specific areas of wellness?
Well, I'd actually have to go into what those letters stand for to explain it. But I, during the pandemic, during in 2020, 21, like a lot of many others, had more time on my hands.
Hmm.
And so I started blogging. I formed a website, created a website for my patients to really be able to get more information because, those little 15, 20-minute slots, it's hard to talk about nutrition fully when you got to talk about medications, you talk about the vaccinations, COVID vaccines. I mean, that takes up all your time. So I felt like I needed another outlet, another source for my patients. So I said, I'm gonna create this website, and I'm gonna have that health information on it. So I started blogging. And when I blogged, I took different topics about food, mostly about food, but also the importance of exercise and the importance of avoiding these toxins, alcohol, tobacco, there's 10,000 toxins in processed food, about restorative sleep, the importance about that, about lessening stress, about engaging their mind when they're at this point, at like where I am in my life, where you're retired, you don't want to retire to the couch or the golf course. It doesn't exercise enough regions of your mind. And then the last two S's for social energy and for spiritual connectivity. So it was really a holistic approach. I thought you can't just focus on only food. And there's certain nutrition I learned in my training from Dr. Rosenthal, who stated, and this is what drew me into my training about integrative nutrition. He said that primary nutrition has nothing to do with food. And that statement alone got my attention. He said primary nutrition is not on your plate. It's involved with relationships, it's
Mm.
involved with movement, with purpose and spiritual connectivity. And I'm like, wow, that's so true. Because who's gonna select good food? Who's gonna make good food choices if they're in a bad relationship and they're up all night and their heart is aching? Who's
Yeah.
gonna who's gonna make good food choices if they feel like they have no purpose in life? So that made so much sense to me. So I said, I think I need to start looking at things differently. And so I decided to write this book because at some point I had amassed all this information and topics, and I thought, well, somebody mentioned to me, why don't you put this in a book? And so that kind of gave me the idea, I think I am going to spend some time to write this book. So as soon as I retired, actually leading up to retirement, I started writing and figuring it out.
Nice, nice. And so, since F for food is that first letter we've got there in fearless, I do want to talk a bit more about food. I just said how difficult it is to make dietary changes, especially ones that are what could be seen as extreme, to go from eating all types of meat, all types of things, to a whole food plant based diet. Many people struggle with that. I could just be honest and say that I am one of those people. How can someone begin integrating more plant-based foods into their daily routine without it feeling like this is something that's overwhelming or it's a daunting task to take on?
And that's a great question, and it's very common. There aren't many people that can just stop on a dime.
Mm.
It's all people sometimes don't like this analogy, but I think it fits. It's like smoking. It's difficult to stop smoking, right?
Yeah.
You're addicted, and really many of these foods are addictive. The sugar,
Mm.
that that
Mhm.
that combination of salt, oil, and sugar that food engineers put in the processed food that just make us want to have that food. That Chicago mix caramel corn. I don't know if you're aware of
So
that.
good. Oh, I
Uh,
am. It's delicious.
yeah, I mean, yeah, that pizza,
Mhm.
those hot dogs. I mean,
Mhm.
yeah, even though I've been plant-based for several years, it still churns some desire in me to want it. But I get over it, because I know what's at stake. And so the
Right.
first thing is the mindset. You got to
Mm.
get to that mindset, because after the mindset comes the intention, and
Mm.
after the intention comes gathering more knowledge. And so that's the thing. You get the mindset, and the way to get your mindset in it is to figure out your why. Why do you care? Why does this matter to you? And you can't settle for because I want to be healthier. That's too vague,
Too
right?
broad.
You know,
Mhm.
like for me, I knew I wanted to get off medications. I mean, here I'm a physician, right? I wanted to get off these medications. I was having side effects. I didn't like being dependent on medications.
Mhm.
That was my why. But I had more. I had most men in my family didn't live past 60, 65.
Wow.
There were all these women. We go to family reunions and weddings. Where are the men? Where are the older
Mm.
men? Where are our elders?
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
died from strokes or heart attacks or cancer. And the women, they're surviving, but many of them they're just complaining if they're over 60. Oh, this medicine and my
Mm.
doctor and all that. So those things run in my head too. So that helps you figure out your why. For some people, I want to be able to fit in the size 6 dress. But it's figuring out your why is what you can always come back to when it's time to stand up and resist some of those cravings, which aren't going to last forever. Cravings don't last that long,
Mm.
but you just got to get to that point. So for some people, many people, it's like you want to stick your toe in the water, and you ease down in the water instead of
Mm.
jumping in. And if
Yeah.
you're that kind of person, then you take it one step at a time, but have a program, have a plan. Maybe
Mm.
you're going to, okay, you eat on average 2 or 3 servings of plants per day, plant-based foods per day. Let's make this next 2 weeks 4. You're going to plan ahead each weekend. Make sure you shop so you have those things. You don't have to eat food you don't like. Eat food you like. Make a list of the foods you like that are healthy foods. There are vegetables, there's fruit, there's whole grains, there's beans, then there's herbs and
Mhm.
spices, nuts and seeds. Make a list of those
Right.
things and make sure they're plentiful, and stop buying the stuff that will tempt you. If you've got
Mm.
other people at home, get it out of sight. But the key thing, back to your main question, is that figure out, getting your mindset, your why, and then taking it one step at a time with a program. So my book, I think it's the third chapter, that has the program of step by looking at more
Yes.
addition by subtraction. I'm sorry, by subtraction by addition, which
Okay.
means by adding wholesome food in, it will subtract out some of the bad stuff. Don't focus right in on the fact that you shouldn't have those fries, or that fried chicken bone, right?
Yeah.
You want to first focus in on what you should be eating and enhancing that, and then wait a while before you start subtracting some things. Because once you
Mm.
start getting that in, you're going to start feeling better anyway, physically and mentally, and it'll be easier to let go of some of these other things. And don't beat yourself up. Everybody deviates a little bit, but you just
Yeah.
get back on track. So, yeah, so it starts with your why, getting that mindset, and taking it step by step.
Absolutely. I appreciate that you acknowledge that not everyone can just kind of jump right into that pool. Some of us have to dip our toe in, experience a little bit, and even building up more of what you do like before we even talk about subtracting the things that we don't. For me, that part is the most difficult because I keep thinking about, well, man, I do want some of this Chicago style popcorn or some of this deep dish pizza. Like it looks and smells so delicious. That's much better than brown rice over here. So to be able to, start small there, I know is an important thing for lots of us out here who you may be looking for, looking towards a lifestyle change as far as our diet and food are concerned. But of course, we cannot just completely change our life by changing our food. We must also move our body and get more into exercise. Can you talk to us a bit more about what role regular physical activity plays
Oh, sure. It is important to move. If you don't move, that means your heart's not giving you really
in the
as good a
word?
circulation as you can achieve.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No,
And
go ahead.
so, okay. So when you exercise regularly, and some people say, well, I walk a block to the train station for work every day. That's not exercise. It is movement, and it's good you move, but that's not exercise. So exercise is where you, with intent, you regularly increase your heart rate to above its average level, and you do so for a period of time. So if you're not exercising at all, say you're over 40, maybe talk with your doctor first. Perhaps don't just jump out there and try to run a marathon. That could be a disaster. But if that's not the case, or if it is the case and you've talked with your doctor, you just start walking, brisk walking. You don't need an insanity workout. You don't need to belong to expensive gym. You're your best. You're in your better space when you're at home because it's so convenient. You don't have to put on any fancy, any clothes for working out or anything like that. You just work out. So walk around your home if you can. Now, some people live in environments they can't feel comfortable walking around. Okay, you can walk out in your home or figure something else, mall walk. But brisk walking is a wonderful exercise, but you need to do it consistently. Why? Because your legs are next to your heart, they're your most important pumps that you have. They help to pump blood flow. Your heart pumps your leg. Your legs, when they're exercising, when those muscles tighten, they're pumping that blood further to your extremities and back up to your heart. And so circulation is very important. What else does exercise do? It makes you breathe more. Fortunately, we have something called autonomic nervous system, so we don't have to focus on breathing or our heart beating, right? But on the other hand, we often breathe tidal breaths or shallow breaths. But when you exercise, you breathe deeper. So there's more of a circulation of oxygen. So that's important too, as well as it gives you the reason to live. People they talk about all the time about calcium and we're going to get enough of this or that. But if you don't exercise, do strength bearing exercise, weight bearing exercise, where you or use bands, rubber bands, or those
Mm-hmm.
bands that can stretch, then you're not putting enough tension on those bones to make them feel like they need to continue to survive. So exercise is very important. It's good for your brain. Look at how many people have dementia now, right? A lot of people
Mm-hmm.
retire and they stop using their brain like they should. So
Yeah.
you want to do mental exercise, but you need to do physical exercises. At Rush, where I was from, Rush Medical Center, they did a study on Alzheimer's, and they found there was a 40% decrease in those that regularly exercise 5 times a week, at least about 20 to 30
Mm,
minutes. Big
really?
difference, 40%. That's a big difference. So putting that together with some diet changes can add years to your mental and physical life.
Wow, it's interesting that you correlated the relationship between Alzheimer's and exercise. I am a social worker in a dialysis clinic, and so I'm often with patients who are sitting still, 4 hours, 3 times a week in the clinic, and that tends to carry over to their personal life outside of the clinic as well. And they sit at home a lot, and they don't necessarily get moving. But the patients of mine who are more active, who do more exercise, even if it's just, a pool workout or walking around their neighborhood, their mental clarity is so much better than those who go home after treatment and just sit. So even if they're just exercising those off days and when they're not at the clinic, those other 4 days, I can agree and say that the patients who do so, especially those that are, an older age, tend to be much more, I call them spicy. They tend to be much more spicy and more active and more apt to want to continue to do more things. And so thank you for that, because I will definitely be sharing that with patients tomorrow in my clinic about, come on now, we got to get ourselves moving, even if it's just, walking in your neighborhood.
Yes, it's crucial. Cardiologists will tell you that.
Hmm.
Psychologists will tell you that. I mean, any ologist will tell you how important exercise is. It even helps you sleep. You think
Absolutely.
about it, how does it do that? Well, when you exercise, you create kind of a deficit where you need more rest, and your body, your body responds by allowing you to rest better. And resting is crucial too. Good rest.
Absolutely. Absolutely, absolutely. And so while we are starting to incorporate more positive things, better eating habits, more of a focused exercise or a movement regimen, it also would seem to be important, like you've mentioned in your A, to avoid toxins. Things like habits like smoking are important to stop to increase the health of your body. But what are some hidden toxins that people in everyday life may not think about and things that they should avoid?
Yes, that's an important point. And every time we have a meal, we may be having some hidden toxins,
Hmm.
because 55% of the standard American diet, also referred to as the SAD diet,
Yeah.
is composed of highly processed foods. So what do we mean by highly processed foods? It means foods that tend to not look like they did when they came out of the ground. Foods where often fiber has been extracted. Foods where often chemicals have been added, dyes, emulsifiers, preservatives, thickening agents. And so when you ask, well, what's the risk of those? They can't tell you. They haven't been studied. There's this term called GRAS, generally regarded as safe, that the government
Mm.
uses. That means they haven't been tested. They're just generally regarded as safe, right? So, but are
Yeah.
they really safe? And
Mhm.
there are some studies that some of these things not being so safe, and we find out over time. Okay, government a few months ago said this type of blue dye is not good. It's been in our food for decades, right?
Yeah.
Where and Europe discovered this 16 years ago. So, what is that about? So there are certain chemicals in food. Speaking of Europe, that are banned there that are allowed here. And so there are 10,000 additives in this country that are used in corporations
Wow.
for our food. And the more we are exposed to, the more risk we take. So we should become great label readers. And we should really avoid those foods where when you read the label, and one thing I do like about this country is when you read the label, the first ingredient is what's most in that food, the first
Mm.
ingredient. So
Okay.
if wheat is the third or fourth ingredient, well, what is it before that, right? So, and then what are the compounds after that? Are they something you don't have in your pantry or on your shelf? That has some kind of weird long name.
Mm.
How healthy or how potentially unhealthy is that? So I prefer. avoid those highly processed foods. They're usually in the middle of the grocery store. The periphery
Yeah.
is where,
It's
where
where
you
the good
have the
stuff is. Yeah.
produce. Yeah, so that's where you should be hanging out, where the natural rainbows are, not where the marketing rainbows on the bag bottles and cans are,
Mm,
because they're holding some things that are maybe toxic to you. Not acutely. Corporations don't want to kill you off acutely. They don't want to kill you at all.
yeah.
They want you to buy their product.
Right.
So that's what's important to them. So they're going to make it sweet, salty, and they're going to make it fatty because the texture and how it cooks with the fat. And then that's what ends up killing us years later.
Understood. Understood. This is a tough way to ask this question, but is there a safe toxin, right? So are there certain foods that are in the middle of the grocery store in those aisles, with chips, crackers, those types of things? Some of them are marketed as gluten-free or sugar-free or dairy-free or whatever the freeze. Are any of those things just as toxic as the ones who don't have anything removed?
It's really a relative scale. I'm not telling people to stay away from the middle. There's some
Mm-hmm.
probably good things in the middle. I mean, there's some pastas that are made with lentils
Mm-hmm.
and have very
They are
little
good.
additive in it, no
Okay.
dyes added to it. You know, we like to eat something besides just fruit and veggies, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, the thing is to do your homework, do the due diligence, and read the labels and stay away from the stuff that has a whole bunch of things you can't even pronounce,
Understood.
and where the first ingredient should be the main thing you're looking for. If it's a wheat product, that should be the first ingredient, shouldn't be the third or fourth, because that tells you if it's the third or fourth, that means a whole lot of fillers are in it that you probably don't need and may be unhealthy. So no, I don't want to paint with a broad brush and say all processed food is bad. No, most ultra processed foods are bad. Now, what's
Mm,
ultra processed? Let me give you kind of a grading here. An apple is a whole food. A
okay.
sliced up apple is processed, right? So
Ah, okay.
is there a problem with that? No. Applesauce, okay, it's pureed, but that's another level of processing if they've added sugar to it or a
Mm-hmm.
preservative. Then the next level might be apple juice. Now they've extracted some of the nutrients, all the fiber, which you really should have the fiber, and they've often added some sugar to it, make it even sweeter, sometimes not. But that's the next level where you've taken out so much of that important part and you've added something in. Then we go to the level of the apple pie that may be in the freezer. Oh, you got a paragraph of chemicals. There may be a little bit of apple in there.
Mm-hmm. Last
and
thing on
you
the
got
list.
and you got some serious sugar and fat going into your body. And then we get to the ultimate apple gummy bears,
Mm,
where you have no apple in it. Okay. You got nothing but chemicals and sugar and maybe some oil. And so that's kind of that scale. And you want to stay away from that extreme scale. And you
okay.
want to stay away from processed meats. There's some toxins in that. They get more toxic when you grill them. There's
Mm,
some nitrogen compounds that get worse and become mutagenic, means they can change your DNA. They can alter your
oh,
DNA. They can be cancerogenic. They can cause cancer. And sometimes in that grilling, we could come off this summer where you like to grill. Boy, that
mm-hmm.
person that's really at greatest risk is that person standing over the grill,
Oh,
breathing
yeah.
in that
Inhaling all that.
smoke,
Mm-hmm.
and then eating that meat that's been charred. And now you've got it even higher in its risks of cancer causing. And,
Mm.
it just all adds up. So if we can start to minimize these things, we can enhance our health.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor.
Americans are increasingly concerned about mental health, with nearly 9 in 10 voters seeing it as a crisis. Mental Health First Aid provides crucial training to identify, understand, and respond to mental health and substance use challenges. Gain the skills and confidence to offer life-saving assistance. We offer courses for individuals, groups, and organizations of all sizes, including specialized training for veterans, law enforcement, EMS, and educators. Visit mentalhealthfirstaid.org or email hello@mentalhealthfirstaid.org to schedule your training and make a difference in your community.
Right, right. And that's interesting. I've never really heard the correlation between grilled foods. And you said it, I'm like, duh, it makes all the sense. But nobody has ever actually said that to me, at least, the correlation between the smoke, the fumes, and you're standing there breathing it all in. And I like a burnt hot dog. And so now I'm eating this extra burnt processed food, which, yeah, I'm just increasing the amount of toxin I'm giving myself. That's really,
Yeah, I'm
yeah.
feeling you because I grew up with that, those barbecue grills and the hot
Hmm.
dog, burnt hot dog, and I
Let
don't
me
know
tell you,
if you ever
James, I'm
got
in the
it.
South. I mean,
What
I can't
about
help
the
it.
what about the bologna? You know what I mean? The grill.
Yeah, because it's
That
like you have to have the burnt bologna. Like you can't just eat that straight out the
that's right.
pack. Right.
With the white bread.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that stuff was not doing us any good.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's lots to be said about those nitrogen compounds, especially in the processed meat, the hot links, the sausages, the hot dogs, the ham, the
Mm-hmm.
bacon, all this comfort food, right? But it's all high salt, high fat, and high chemicals with these processed meats. The Cancer Society several years ago said there's Class A evidence, means top line evidence that these foods increase your rate of colon cancer and other cancers by 18%.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow. Wow. Okay. Hmm. Got some changes to make there, Doc.
You're
Um,
going to figure out, but by the end of this segment, you're going to know your why. Your why
I
is going to be
mean, because
solid.
you were just, I feel like you're screaming at me right now to get my life together.
It's a mindset.
It really is. And a lot of it
Yeah.
isn't anything that is, talked about readily and discussed in any detail. Cause a lot of this is new to me. And I'm not young, I'm 40. So a lot of it is new to me. And so I'm glad that you're here discussing these things because a lot of us haven't heard them
Yeah.
before.
Yeah, and again, I keep using this term shameful, but it is because you go to your doctor and you want your doctor to be knowledgeable about what can keep you not only alive but healthy, which
Hmm.
means you're thriving. But the average doctor, I'm not gonna say all doctors, but many of the doctors don't know what they don't know. They
Right.
weren't trained about this in medical school. They're not incentivized to get the training or propagate or teach people about this in practice. They're under pressure to see you within those 15-minute slots. And they don't do this themselves. How's the doctor going to talk to you about doing all this and they're not doing this, right? I mean, how many overweight doctors have you seen? I've seen a lot of them, you know.
Yeah.
So it's tough,
It
but it
is.
can
It
be.
definitely is. It is. It is. One of the things that I know many people do struggle with is sleep, and not just being able to sleep, being actually have that restorative sleep where you're actually rejuvenating yourself when you're sleeping. You mentioned that earlier as well as being one of the key components in that restorative sleep is the R for your fearlessness. You mentioned it earlier, but can you explain why sleep is so crucial for both the mind and the body? And are there any tips that you can share with us to improve sleep quality?
Sure. I drew most of my information sleep by listening to a doctor. He's a PhD, Dr. Matthew Walker, who is head at Berkeley, UC Berkeley, of their sleep center. And he has a book out called Why We Sleep. Wonderful book. And so I really used that as the core, the platform for what I said about sleep. And he gives several tips on how to enhance your sleep status, sleep hygiene tips. And so the importance of it is that when we sleep, that's when our body gets rest. And the body needs rest. It should be going 24/7. We shouldn't be burning the candles at both ends, as the candle at both ends, like many of us do. I certainly
Yeah.
have been guilty of that. But
Mhm.
you need rest because it allows your 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 muscles to rest. It allows your brain to rest. When your brain gets the rest, it's able to now put these documents into files from all the experiences you've had during the course of the day. I wish I knew this when I was in medical school and in college. But when you get that 7, 8 hours sleep or even 9, it allows your brain to process things so you can recall them the next day and beyond.
Yeah.
It also allows for you to become more creative. It enhances that creative zone in the brain. It also allows a kind of resetting. There's something called glymphatics. We didn't know about that till recent decades, I think. There was lymphatics we knew, and that's where kind of tissue waste gets drained away and finds its way to the venous system of our body. We have arterial and we have venous. But there's glymphatics. That's in the brain where waste material is gotten rid of. So this whole process works better when the brain is allowed to rest, so the brain can restore. And so if we're burning that midnight oil and then getting up after 3 or 4 or even 5 hours of sleep and not getting more sleep, we're not allowing our brain to reset, to retool. And we're not allowing our gut to do that. Because what are we doing when we're staying up a lot, late? We're
Snacking.
eating. We're eating, we're snacking. If we get 8 or 9 hours sleep, we're not snacking during that time.
That's true.
We're actually doing a fast. That's where breakfast came from. You get sleep and then you
Breaking the
break the
fast.
fast.
Mm-hmm.
But if you were getting 4 hours sleep, what kind of fast is that, right? So your gut doesn't even get a break. So that's why it's so important to do that. And so some tips on that is to really resonate with what I've just said and realize you got to get a mindset that you need at least 6 to 7 hours of sleep. 7 is better than 6. And that you immediately start to schedule your days like that. Like for me, I know I want to be asleep by 10. So I set my alarm for 9. 9 is my wind down. That means I know I'm not going to be looking at any exciting movie between 9 and 10. I'm not going to be looking at social media between 9 and 10. I'm not going to be looking at the news between 9 and 10. I want to settle down. I'm going to dim the lights. That's another thing. The body responds in the brain center with melatonin production by the light. That bright light in the morning that wakes you up, tells you it's time to start that what's called a circadian rhythm. And then there's that evening slow down, the dimming of the light. The sun goes down, but we have the bright lights in our homes, right?
Right.
Dim the lights about 30 minutes to an hour before going to bed. Then make sure the environment's cool. Some people, everybody's different. Sometimes people sleep better in a warm environment, but most people, a cooler environment is better. You can get under the covers.
Yeah.
For some people, it might be good to take a warm or hot shower before they go to bed. It's good to turn off those rays from the laptops and from the phone and from your TV. Don't sleep with the TV on. You think it helps you sleep, but it doesn't. Try not to eat within 4 hours of sleeping, a full meal within 4 hours. Maybe you can get a snack, but not within 2 or 3 hours of bedtime.
Okay.
The last thing you want is to put your gut to work while it should be getting rest. And then you get an insulin spike if you eat that candy bar before you go to bed. And then your sugar goes down too low in the middle of the night. You get up to use the washroom like I do a couple times, and you want to eat something, because your body's telling you you've got a deficit of sugar because you had that insulin spike. So having that meal far more removed from bedtime, setting up your bedtime environment. Don't eat in the bedroom. Let bedroom be your sleep. Don't have your entertainment center in your bedroom. The bedroom is the place for sleep. And
Gotcha.
so those are a few tips. There are many more. There are more in my book, and Dr. Matt Walker. You can go online and on YouTube. He's all over YouTube explaining these things.
Okay, we'll have to check that out. One of the things that I hear a lot of people talk about is how their sleep is affected by stress. So you're stressed at work, you're stressed when you come home with your family, your children, whatever, stressed with life, especially these days with the ever-changing political climates. It is a stressful time for a lot of us, walking through our days, trying to make it, which many of us, it affects how well we sleep. So I completely understand why stress management is a part of your fearless model. But how can somebody lessen stress in a way that's actually realistic and sustainable, something that they can keep up with on a daily basis?
Well, first it's important to understand the process and the circumstances. First of all, there's stress in terms of how our body responds, right? Stress is always a response to something. So let's go upstream a little bit. Stressors, right? So we want to first know what are our stressors. And some of our stressors we can directly do something about, right? And some of them we can't. Like we can't do much about what's going on geopolitically. I mean, we can, but nothing that we can do real quickly about that.
Right. Yeah.
But we can by not accepting things that put more stress on us. If you've already got 3 tasks for the week, you're going to accept a 4th and a 5th one because someone asked you, right? So you may have to learn to say no to some things in terms of putting more things on your plate that they're going to overload what you have to think about and do. So, and then there's some other stressors. You need to sit back and think, what are the stressors I have control over that I can either reduce or eliminate? And if you're getting overwhelmed and you're losing sleep over stuff, attack those first. Address those, I should say, first. The stressors you have control over. Now, there's stressors we don't have control over, and that's where we just have to make our bodies more resilient to that stress. And that's where all the other pillars come along. Eating healthy food helps you to handle stress. Exercise helps you to handle stress. Getting enough rest helps you to handle stress. Lessening stress by yoga, by meditation, mindfulness helps you to handle stress. all the pillars we're talking about actually helps you to handle stress, including that L, lessening stress. So if you do these things as a collective, you'll find that even these stressors that you have no control over don't have as much of a physiologic and psychological impact on you. And that's the important thing.
Absolutely, because like you mentioned, a lot of the things that we, as you know, as humans, as Americans, that we stress over aren't things that we can necessarily control. What we can't control is how we respond to them and allow those things to negatively impact us. But you also mentioned all of the things, all of the pillars so far that we've discussed really do go into how we can manage our stress a lot better.
That's right. That's right.
Yep. Yep.
And stress is a real physiologic thing. Some people think it's just psychological. It's physiological. It's science has proven that there are multiple genes in our bodies that respond a certain way when we're under any kind of stress, especially chronic stress. You know, many people know about cortisol, but it goes deeper than that. Cortisol is a hormone that's released that is called the stress hormone, but there are also other hormones that are involved. There's something called the conserved response to adversity, the CTRA, conserved transcriptional response to adversity. CTRA response is a physiologic biochemical response to stress that we can change by those things that I've mentioned. That can change. Our body's physiological response can change by eating healthy, by getting proper rest, and taking these other measures.
Nice, nice. We also talked a little bit ago about engaging your mind or keeping your mind active and how it can have a negative impact on us as we grow older. What are some ways to stimulate mental growth, especially in a way that we are able to keep our minds moving as we age? Maybe our bodies are not doing as many things. Maybe we've retired. How can we keep our mind moving? How can we keep engaging it?
Yeah. That's an important question. And I will preface this by saying my answer is sourced from other mentors that have done the research, like
Yes.
Dr. Dean and Aisha Sherzai, Sherzai, I believe. They're all over the internet. They're in Loma Linda, California. They are Alzheimer's experts. They've been totally dedicated to preventing Alzheimer's through non-pharmacological methods. So I'm drawing from a body of their work and their presentations. And what they recommend is that we challenge the mind. Now, the mind is often challenged when you're in school anyway. You don't have to worry about this if you're in college or in high school, you're in graduate school, whatever you're doing, or just working a job right now. You don't have to generally be concerned about it. But if you're retired or things are slowing down, or that's when you want to make sure you keep that mind working. So you want to engage in activities that involve different parts of your brain working collectively together. So there are things like learning how to play a new instrument, learning a new language. Those are things, because when you learn a new language, right, you're reading, that's visual. You might be reciting, that's moving your tongue, it's hearing. You may be moving your hands, in expression, but you're using different parts of the brain when you learn something like that. Learning a new dance, working on a community project. These are all things that that involve mind engagement, as opposed to, say, spending hours gaming, spending hours just watching TV. You enjoy it. You're a movie buff, and I love movies. But you're sitting there hours watching. You're gonna, what do they call it when you
Binging? You're binge watching your
binging?
shows?
Yes, when you're binging all night watching something, Game of Thrones or something. So that's not really engaging your mind enough. So you need to be involved with some of these other activities so your mind gets exercised also, and then it'll reward you with delaying or preventing you getting dementia.
Nice. So you mentioned just now that for people that are in school, you are engaging your mind. Is there a time where it's too late to start for prevention of Alzheimer's or any other dementia-based illnesses?
Yeah, if you have advanced Alzheimer's, it's too late.
It's too late. Okay.
It's yeah, because it's not reversible. I mean, it's a degenerative process where if it's advanced, you're just not going to be able to change things. But many people don't have advanced. Many people are in what's called a mild cognitive impairment phase.
Yeah.
Many people are in the early Alzheimer's phase. There's a Dr. Dean Ornish. Now information is so easily to gain. I drop these names because people can easily just look them up. They can vet what I'm saying and see what I'm talking about. Dr. Dean Ornish took a cohort of people, just a group of people that have been adjusted for their backgrounds and their age and gender and all that. And he showed that you can actually slow down the process, prevent the process of progression of Alzheimer's by making diet and lifestyle changes. What diet did they basically adopt? A whole food plant-based diet.
Yeah.
And he had them do some I'm not sure if he was that heavy on the exercise, but he was definitely wanted them to have some social connections and things like that. But he had a very nice study that showed that you can make a difference with diet and lifestyle changes. And so yes, it's not, so the thing is, it's not too late for most people.
Gotcha.
If you're very advanced in your dementia, whether it be Alzheimer's or some of the other ones, it may be too late, and you should focus on you should focus on the caregiver then, because there's some special caregiver concerns.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. And I want to kind of combine the last two S's, because for me, they do kind of work together. Like many of the other things in the framework, they do work together. So social energy and spiritual connections. Many people find their social connection in a spiritual environment, like a church. You mentioned that you and your church, this is how you started your journey, which is doing your Daniel's fast with your church community. Many people look towards their church or their spiritual membership for that social connection. Can you talk to us a bit about how social energy impacts our health? What are some steps for someone to maybe cultivate stronger social connections? And then how can the spiritual aspects play into that as well?
Sure. Well, fortunately, they do overlap greatly, and
Hmm.
they're not mutually exclusive. They are things that work well together. So
Absolutely.
yes, your social energy, if it's involved with church activities 3 or 4 times a week, then that's taking care of your spiritual connectivity and your social energy.
Right.
But they don't have to be the same. You know, you may be involved with a community project. You may be involved with a volunteer work in various settings. You may become politically involved. You know, be one of the polling agents or judges at the polling for during these elections. Now that may bring on some stress too, but but these are still, you're engaging in something that still helps your mind. There's some hormones that go up that are good hormones, some of them from the gut, when you are engaged with other people. Oxytocin, when you hug somebody or when you really engage somebody. It's been shown that when you follow the physiologic parameters, when people are together and just socializing, their heart rates tend to come down, which is always a good thing. And their oxytocin and serotonin levels goes up. Most of about 70% of serotonin comes from the gut. People often say this gut feeling, and you usually have a good gut feeling when you're around other
Hmm.
people that where you have a kind of a like-mindedness. So yes, there's something to be said physiologically in terms of the benefit from social engagement. Now, what's the opposite of that? People that isolate themselves. Well, they don't often do very well. People that are recluse or isolate themselves, that's the opposite. Means that you are going to have, you potentially are going to have some problems when you don't interact with people. Why was such an uproar about pandemic and the mandates about,
Hmm.
isolating yourself? Well, yeah, kids and adults, stuck in the homes, there was some plus side. Some families engage more with each other,
It's true.
but
That's true.
there are a lot of families where the parents had to still get out. These kids are just at home, or older individuals are just at home by themselves more. Nobody's coming to
Yeah.
visit. They didn't want you to visit. Don't bring COVID into my house. I'm 78
Hmm.
years old. So,
Right.
but then that took away from that social engagement. Church, things like that really took a dip. And so those are detrimental things when you are isolated. So it's there now. The spiritual connection, it doesn't have to be a religion. For me, it is, but it doesn't have to be for you. For some people, it's a philosophical engagement. It may be yoga or something else. Generally, it's
Okay.
some greater force that grounds you and that you can call on to kind of empower or make you more resilient in times of need. It just tends to work out there. We found that in people that have experienced cancer. The ones that have that spiritual connectivity tend to do better when they get their chemotherapy or treatment than the ones that don't.
Right. Right. Agree with you completely. And so, as we have been talking about all of the things in the fearless model, one may think that it is kind of a lot to do at once, right? So, Is this something was it designed for it to be we just jump all in, we do all of the things, make all of the changes all at one time? Or is it something that can be broken down into small bits? Or is there a kickstart type of program? Can you walk us through how best to begin towards this journey?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, in the I outline what you're going to read kind of in a, or experience in the intro in a way to set the stage that this is a guide. It's not a step by step where you do each chapter and react or act on each chapter. It's really a guide to fit into the individual's circumstances and lifestyle where they can make some changes. And so small changes that you make can add up to huge differences later on. So you might not be so well with the social interaction part, but you've got that plant-based part down and you're getting your rest and you're exercising. You're still adding over a decade, like decade of years to your life, even if you don't hit all 8 pillars. And there are some people, they don't do so well on the food. They do something that may be described as a flexitarian diet. So they have meat 3 or 4 times a month, but they're still eating 6, 7, 8, 9, servings of plant-based foods every day. And they're still trying to get their rest and they're still getting some exercise with some degree of regularity. They're adding probably over a decade of years to their life. So the thing is, it's not all or none. It's really doing as much as you can and not as fast as you can, but doing as much as you can, as well as you can, and understanding that progress is prioritized over perfection.
Nice. Very nice. So as we come to a close, Dr. Thompson, where can listeners learn more about you, your book, Fearless Wellness, and your programs that you offer?
Yeah, thank you for asking. My book is on Amazon, so it's easy to get to. Hopefully you don't mind using Amazon, but at Amazon, there are 3 ways you can get it on Amazon. One, you can buy the paperback form of it. There's also a form you can get called an ebook form. Many people like to read their books on their tablets and phones, and that's fine. And it's also on Audible. So those are the 3 options you have. And so I don't have it in any other platform right now for selling. I am medical director of Healthy Living with a Vision Foundation. We have various events in person around the greater Chicago area and online. We have an online event coming up in a couple of weeks on low vision, and we tie in nutrition. And we have an in-person event in the south suburb of Chicago. This is all on our website, healthylivingwithavision.org. Again, healthylivingwithavision.org. And so you'll have all that information and sign up information there. I also coordinate a Kickstart, 28-day Kickstart to plant-based eating every year. It'll be our 4th year, starting the day after Dr. Martin Luther King holiday, which will be January 20th. And it's for 4 Tuesdays, Zoom program, 7 p.m. Eastern time. It's free, and you just have to sign up for it. We will have flyers in the next few weeks or so on our website for that. We had 500 people sign up last year.
Wow.
We averaged about 70 to 80 people in the room. I always get in guest speakers, different ones every year, that talk about nutrition topics. I have a nutritionist this year that will kick it off. I have a cardiologist. Our theme this year is saving our heart. So this year I have a cardiologist and a health coach and dietitian on those different Tuesdays that will present. And we only present for about 20 minutes. We leave at least 20 to 30 minutes for question and answer.
Nice.
So we really try to set that up. And so I have a website also called fearlessmd21.com. That's the name of my book, but not the wellness part. It's just fearlessmd21.com. The first thing you see on there is my book. That's another way of getting to it. And then I have the blogs I've been talking about that went into my book that I've been doing over the last 4 years that are all posted on my website. And I try to update that once a month or so. So thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming to speak with us today. I know myself, like my listeners, are going to look into the things that you've shared with us today and your book as well. So I really appreciate you speaking with us today, James.
Thank you.
And thank you to our listeners for taking the time to join us. Make sure to follow us on all of our social media at Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, and even on YouTube at Behavioral Health Today. Make sure to like our show and give us 5 stars and leave us a review. As always, the resources for this episode and an archive of all of our other episodes can be found on our webpage at triadhq.com/BHT. And we look forward to having you back with us next time on Behavioral Health Today.
We appreciate all the support from our community, and if you like our show, one of the best ways you can support it is by giving us a 5-star rating and leaving a review. Behavioral Health Today is a podcast part of the Triad Behavioral Health Network, all rights reserved.